Hi, Love Bug. Welcome to the Naked Yoga Podcast. This podcast is all about incorporating bits and pieces of yogic philosophy and spirituality into your everyday life. I'm your host, Nneka, a graduate student at Columbia University's Spirituality Mind Body Institute. I'm also a yoga and meditation instructor at a little studio called Core Power Yoga. You may have heard of it. My mission here is to help you nourish your mind, body, and spirit connection. Each podcast episode will begin with a guided meditation, followed by the core of the episode pairing a spiritual concept with science. Lastly, each episode will end with a mindful closure, providing you with actionable steps you can do after listening to deepen your mind, body, and spirit connection. So, without further ado, let's get right into today's episode. Hello. It has been a week since our last episode, but I'm actually recording them back to back, so it hasn't been that long for me. I wanted to check in. How did you guys feel about that dream life meditation? It is absolutely one of my favorites, and I've actually tweaked it quite a bit since I wrote that last episode script, but it's still just so good in whatever form it's in. But welcome. If this is your first episode, my name is Nneka. I'm your host. And if this isn't your first episode, welcome back. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about tips for new yoga teachers. I have been teaching yoga for about 2 years now, which seems insane. I really feel like I just got my certification yesterday, but it's literally yoga has changed my life, and it's been the absolute best 2 years ever just being a yoga teacher. And so I want to just share all the tips that I have learned along the way and hopefully make it easier for you if you're thinking about getting your yoga teacher certification. Of course, as always, before we get started in today's episode, we are going to have a little mindful opening meditation. And today we are going to be focusing on the throat chakra. So when you're ready, find an easy, comfortable seated position and let's dive in. We'll begin with 3 inhales. When you're ready, inhale, fill all the way up, and let it go. Twice more, inhale, fill all the way up, and let it go. Last time, inhale, fill all the way up, hold at the top, and then let it go. Beginning to settle in, noticing the earth underneath you, noticing the earth supporting you, and just beginning to focus on your breath, noticing what rises with every inhale and what falls with every exhale. Continue to breathe here, just like you. I invite you to begin to envision a blue ball of light. This blue ball of light lives right in your throat chakra space, right at the center of your neck. With every inhale, begin to imagine this blue ball of light growing bigger. And with every exhale, begin to imagine this blue energy beginning to flow and fill your body. From the tips of your toes to the crown of your head, continuing to breathe here until you are engulfed in that blue ball of light. Our throat chakra represents communication, honesty, and empathy. And I invite you to take some time right now to reflect on how you can communicate with more honesty and more empathy. Not only to others, we're so quick to think about others, but to yourself. How can you communicate to yourself with honesty and empathy? What truths are you avoiding? And how can you embrace them with an open heart and let go of anything that's not serving you? Continuing to breathe here. Oftentimes, when it comes to communication, it's so hard to say what we mean to others because at the heart of it, we haven't been honest with ourselves. How can anyone be honest with others if they haven't been honest with themselves? Noticing what comes up for you in this moment. How can you hold that truth with empathy? And how can you just let it go and lean into love and compassion? Taking your time here, there's absolutely no rush. As always, if you want to take some time to journal and reflect, I invite you to pause the podcast. But if you feel like you are ready for our conversation, we'll slowly begin to come out of this meditative space just as we came in with 3 breaths. When you're ready, take a nice big inhale in and an exhale. Twice more, inhale and exhale. Last time, big inhale. Hold at the top and then let it go. Beginning to wiggle your fingers and your toes, inviting movement back into your body. And once again, a gentle reminder, if you want to take some time here to pause the podcast and journal on that meditation, I invite you to do so now. That ended up being very, very powerful for me. I'll be honest, I do chakra meditations often in my yoga class. If you haven't taken a class with me, I would love to have you. You can find more information on my Instagram bio at Nneka. But besides the point, I do the throat chakra meditation in particular. I've done dozens of times before, and I'm going to be honest, my notes here were throat chakra meditation, color blue, communication, honesty, and empathy. That is all I wrote. The rest truly just came from the universe, and I honestly was like brought to tears for a moment. That was very, very powerful, and I hope you felt it too. I am still a little bit moved by it. It's so hard to be honest with yourself, isn't it? Sometimes, like we have, our society, what society tells us to do. We have our families, what our families want for us. And then sometimes what you really want just becomes so small in the shuffle that you completely forget, and it's hard to come back to yourself, hard to be honest with yourself. And yeah, that was just very powerful for me. I think I'm going to have to listen to that again when I have some time to journal. But right now I'm actually filming 2 podcasts back to back. So I just filmed the second episode and now we're here. So time is a bit of the essence for me, but we do have all the time in the world. I've learned from actually watching one of my teachers. It's so funny. I was like timekeeping this conference that we were having at my university, and my task was to keep everyone on time. And so I had these flashcards like halfway through, 10 minutes left, 5 minutes left, 2 minutes, wrap it up. And the leader of my program just like completely disregarded the time cards. I'm laughing now because it was just so funny in actuality, but talk about an abundant person, an abundant teacher, just noticing how generous she was with her time, our time, the conference's time. I remember getting a little frustrated, like, hey, like this is my one job to make sure that we're on time and I'm doing what I can, but no one's listening to me. It was like my ego really loud and proud. And just the air about her, we never even had a conversation about it. Just watching her, me giving her the 2-minute cue card and her turning to the guest and being like, do you have anything else? Any final words? Anything else you want to say? And the person going on like a 10-minute tangent, and then me holding up the cue card, time to wrap it up. And then her turning to the audience, does anyone have any questions? We can take about 3, 4, 5, 10 questions. If someone had a question, they had the opportunity to ask it. And I don't even know how we got here. Talk about being generous with time. But that was a really big lesson for me. Like a really big lesson. And just to see someone who's so accomplished and generous and spiritual in a way that I hadn't really witnessed before in my life, and how generous she was with time. So with all that being said, I hope that resonated for someone, because I guess that message just came onto my heart, and it still affects me to this day. Like I really do try to be generous with my time. When people think of generosity, oftentimes they think of like material possessions, but the most precious thing we truly have here is time. And in corporate America and Western culture, time is money. Every meeting's like 30 minutes. Could this have been an email? Trying to conserve our time and our energy and our resources. I challenge you to be generous with your time and your money and your resources this week. Okay, but moving on. So, tips for new yoga teachers. So my first tip really is to find your voice. And some people honestly spend their entire lives searching for their unique perspective and point of view. As a yoga instructor, you truly are stepping into a new identity, and this identity essentially has its own voice. Have you noticed that, you have a different voice when you're talking to your parents than when you're talking to your siblings or to your friends or to your lovers? Becoming a yoga teacher, you will develop a new voice. And that's something that I wasn't truly prepared for. And some aspects of my personality do definitely push through in my yoga teacher voice, my yoga teacher space. but I am a lot more confident, a lot more direct when I teach yoga. For example, when you talk to someone, you say, please, can you lift your right leg high? Versus when you're a yoga teacher, you say, lift your right leg. Do you notice like the difference? Like in normal conversations, we add a lot of fluff. And I think it's just American culture. You don't want to say anything too directly. We're not the most direct speakers. I noticed that. I worked for an Israeli company, and the way the Israel team communicated was far different than how the American teams communicated, and even like the British team, like our London office. So you'll notice that when you become a yoga teacher, you will start speaking from a more confident place because one, you know what you're doing, but two, you know that you need to say it, and you need to say it fast because these bodies are moving and these people are trusting you with their yoga practice. So, you kind of have to step into that fully and strongly. I also kind of recommend like getting your yoga introduction and practicing saying it in the mirror. For me, I typically start my class with, hi everyone, my name is Nneka and I'll be your yoga instructor for the next 60 moments. How is everyone feeling today? And then I'll wait for people to respond if anyone says anything. And then I'll say something like, I'm feeling grateful for this morning, or I just took a Pilates class, so let's see how my brain works today. I also like to check in 15 minutes into the class, 30 minutes into the class, and just saying like, how do you feel? Do you feel good? How is the heat? It's 90 degrees in here. Should I turn it up higher? It's a little joke. Sometimes people laugh. Sometimes it's not a joke and I do turn it up higher. And then for me, I love teaching from the chakra centers. So I integrate a chakra center into every one of my classes. So if you take with me in person, we're either doing the root chakra or the solar plexus chakra or the crown chakra, one of the chakras. I also like to try to add in a moment of meditation, just like we do on the podcast here, where we start with meditation. And then I do try to do a hand mudra as well for the end, one that is connected to the theme of class. Or connected to the chakra center. I actually haven't been quite good at getting new mudras. We've been doing the lotus flower for quite some time, but whatever it is, I like to switch it up once a month and spend some time like studying different aspects of yogic philosophy to keep my classes fresh. But you don't have to do everything just like me. The point here is to find your voice. So how do you want to set up your classes? There's no rules. Just envision yourself as a yoga teacher and begin to move closer to that vision with each and every class you take. Are you like a stoic teacher, like an oh so serious teacher? Are you like a fun teacher, a silly teacher? Are you a cool mom? It's entirely up to you. I had a teacher that would share poems to begin and end the class, and I absolutely loved that. And then I had another teacher that would share us like the Indian origins of a specific pose that we're doing in class. So like she'll tell us about the history of like goddess squat and like what Indian like oh my gosh, I can't even talk. What Indian philosophic goddess it was representative of. You don't even have to go that route. Honestly, the options are limitless. So Just take the time to find what feels authentic to you and take other teachers' classes. Like, figure out what you like. I like to incorporate things that I like from other teachers in my classes. And so that's what I do. Moving on to tip number 2. This is something that I really struggled with when I first started teaching yoga, but I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do this tip. Ignore the music. You heard me right. Ignore the music, at least for the first 6 months. I would recommend just putting on like a generic lo-fi playlist or a meditation playlist, like one of those pre-made ones on Spotify. Because when I was starting out with a teacher, I was so fixated on the music and putting together the best playlist with the latest songs. And truly, that doesn't really matter, at least not when you're first starting out. What truly matters is finding your voice. And when you have these songs going on in the background, your voice can get lost inside your head. I would often think, oh, this song is playing, so we should be at this part in class, but we're not there. So let me go back, change the song. Oh, great. Now I forgot what I was teaching in the first place. And so as a new yoga teacher, I truly think music is just a distraction. I had like upbeat hip hop songs for the work phase and then mellow songs for the resting phase, which, like I said, was great in theory. But as a new yoga teacher, I had not mastered the timing of my class. And so the music was making me anxious. Take that pressure off. I promise you. Just have a generic playlist to start. And then once you get comfortable learning the different timings of the classes, then you can start to tweak the playlist. Try to, limit the different variables. In 6 months, I promise you'll be comfortable with the timing. But until then, I definitely would recommend just a generic playlist, because it takes you a while to realize how long different sequences will take. Like, is a sun salutation A going to take up a 3-minute song? Or in 3 minutes, can you do 2 to 3 sun A's and now you need to move into a different phase of class? Like, these answers you're going to learn by doing, and everyone's timing is different. A lot of people tell me that I have really hard classes, and I think it's because my timing is just a little fast. Versus someone could probably teach the same thing that I'm teaching, but their timing is a little bit slower than mine. And so the class isn't as hard. So again, ignore the music, at least for your first 6 months, and just focus on finding your voice and finding the rhythm in your yoga classes. My next tip is focusing on the breath. So the pranayama is the foundation of the yoga practice. Asana is the movement of the practice, but breathing is the foundation of the practice. So set each and every class up by connecting the community with their breath, starting and ending the class with a collective breath and focusing on the breath within the process. The 2 breaths I always include are the Ujjayi pranayama and a cooling breath, an open mouth inhale and exhale. If you don't know what that Ujjayi pranayama is, it is often called the breath of fire, breathing in through your nose, contracting your throat muscles to breathe out through your nose, and creating an oceanic-like sound with your breath. This will build heat in your body, and it's great if you want to maintain an active practice. Otherwise, you can always stick with those inhales through the nose and open mouth exhales through the mouth. I kind of just slipped into my yoga voice there, but that's something I say in probably each and every one of my classes. So when focusing on the breath, remember cues like feel your body expand with every inhale and contract with every exhale. That's also something I say every single class and even on the podcast too. As you get into teaching yoga, you will have these little tidbits that you say all the time. And that truly comes with just finding your voice. But yes, the yoga practice is about the breath. And if you are going to take a 200-hour, you will learn that the breath comes before the movement of the practice and the order of the 8 limbs of yoga, which let me know. Leave me a comment on my latest Instagram post if you guys would be interested in an episode that goes through all of the 8 limbs of yoga. Because oftentimes, especially in the West, we think of yoga as just like a movement practice, just like an exercise practice, but that is just one limb of yoga, and it's not even like the most important one. So that could be a good episode idea. Let me know what you guys think about that. But yes, focus on the breath. So for my next tip, it would be to slow down. Speaking of time, that's funny because we just had a little tangent earlier about being generous with your time. Slow it down. When I started teaching, and honestly, when I started my YouTube channel as well, I would talk so fast. And it's interesting because the President of the United States does not talk at 1,000,000 miles per minute. Your high school teacher doesn't talk at 1,000,000 miles per minute. Confident, intelligent people who are intentional with their words take their time to deliver the message in a way their audience can understand. So slow down and take your time. There is no need to rush. You are in control of your class, and it's your responsibility to guide them. So if you're speaking a little too fast, mumbling and tripping over your words, that's not a safe way to guide a class. So take your time and just slow down. Even sometimes I'll be teaching and I will just stop. Recenter myself and then get back into teaching. So my next tip is to not to overcomplicate the flow. When one of my first classes, I taught a Warrior 3 with eagle wrapped arms. And while it was great, like I loved it. It's one of my favorite like little combo moves to do in class. I hadn't completely mastered my voice, and I would become overwhelmed with the complexity and the cueing required to cue Eagle Wrap and Warrior 3 at the same time. And for that reason, I would like to remind you just to keep it simple. In the words of Patanjali Joyce, yoga practice should be pleasant but firm. Pleasant and firm. I think it's and firm, not but. But pleasant and firm, not complicated and hard. So you don't need to challenge yourself too much. Your flow can be a simple sonnet. There's nothing wrong with the basics. You don't need to change anything. If you're just starting out, keep it simple. My next tip is to write it down. Write it all down, each and every single one. At some point, once you teach the class enough, you will internalize it. And then when that happens, you'll be able to recite the flow, the inhales and exhales from memory with your eyes closed. And that's your cue to create the next class. But the best advice I can give is to let go of your fear of failure, stumbling on your flows, checking your notes during class. It's all okay and it's all normal. We've all done it. One of my favorite parts of class is actually holding my students in postures and cueing them to take another breath and to settle in a little bit deeper while I check my notes and confirm what the next posture is. There's no rush for you or your class. And while you may feel like you're stalling, your students will feel the intention and the heart within your class. So write it all down, and eventually you'll get to the point where you can kind of shorthand it, like you kind of know what you need to do. So you can just write kind of like the few big postures that you're going to, but it'll happen eventually. And until then, write it all down with the inhales, with the exhales, just so you know where you're going. All right. And the last piece of advice is honestly just to forget about it. Like, seriously, sometimes when you start embodying something, you connect with yourself and the universe in a deeper way, and you begin to intuitively feel like transitions that may be off, or maybe you need to take an additional pause here. And that's okay. Just go with your instinct. You can have everything written down. You can have the perfect plan, but sometimes God has a better plan and the universe has a better plan. And when you're embodying something and actually doing it, it feels a lot different than when you're writing it down. So go ahead and give yourself the grace to vary off the plan a little bit. Go with your instinct and trust yourself. Allow space for the asana practice, for the universe, your ancestors, the ancient tradition of the practice to step in and guide you. And when it does, honestly, you should write that down too. Begin to record the changes and watch how you flow your breath, your breaths, everything kind of grows and evolves as you continue to teach the same class over the next couple of weeks. That's so funny because I'm thinking even now, like, as a more experienced yoga and meditation teacher, like the fact that our opening meditation was just a few words that I written to myself, and then we had this big, powerful, like meditating experience. It's like allowing space for the universe to come in and to really just kind of change the game. You never know what the universe has in store for you. All right, my loves, that is everything that I have for episode 2. We're going to transition into our mindful closure now. So without further ado, let's just get into it. This week, I invite you to host a free yoga class for your community of friends. That is, if you're a certified yoga instructor, if you are a new teacher. If you're not, then I invite you to get some friends together and see how you guys can incorporate, some yoga into your lives. Maybe you find a free community class. Maybe you go to a class together. At the studio I teach at, Core Power Yoga, your first class is always free. So if you haven't been to the studio, it's nationwide. Sorry, US of A only. But get some friends together and maybe you check out the studio. Maybe you even just make a whole evening out of it. Maybe afterwards you go for dinner or protein smoothies or whatever it is. I invite each and every one of you to incorporate some yoga into your lives, and I will see you in the next episode. Love you so much. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Naked Yoga Podcast. My name is Nneka, and if you want more content from me, you can follow me on Instagram or subscribe to my YouTube channel at Nourish Nneka. This is a completely independent podcast. Yes, I write the scripts, record, and edit the podcast all by myself. Therefore, any support you could give, like a share, a comment, maybe leaving a little review on Apple Podcast or wherever you might be listening, would go a very long way and warm my little itty bitty heart. Thank you so much once again for listening, my love bug. I will see you in the next episode.